Welcome to another Chef Knives to Go Quick Look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we're looking at this time is a mirror polished blade, so you're going to see some reflections in there. This is the Nishida Shidogami, or white paper number 1, polished Gyuto 210mm knife. And as mentioned, the core steel is Shidogami, or white paper number 1, reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi. This steel takes a great edge. It's a fine grained steel, very pure, and again is wonderful to sharpen, and will get screaming sharp, which is part of the reason why people buy Shidogami number 1 knives, or number 2 for that matter. The heat treat's about 61 Rockwell-ish on that. These are done by hand, so that's the target. Construction is a soft iron cladding on either side of that core steel for a 3-layer sandwich. And so you can see the core steel peeking out at the edge there from the inside of that layer on the outside from the cladding. The cladding and the core steel are reactive, so this is a very reactive knife. The cladding is actually usually more reactive than the core steel, so you're going to have to keep up with these. You might think about even putting a preemptive patina on it, possibly with some proteins. You get some nice blues and purples that way, typically. But you'll have to definitely keep up with this knife. The weight on these will vary and the dimensions will vary, but this knife has some mass to it. That's their style. The weight on this one's about 6.7 ounces, 191 grams. The edge length on this one, it's a 210, but this particular one's longer. It's almost 220, so it's 219, about 8.6 inches, so kind of the tweener size. The overall length, about 14.2 on this one. The spine thickness on this coming out of the handle above the back of the blade is about 3.4 millimeters. And then it thins down, kind of almost a fairly continuous taper, holds it for a while, and then when you get down at the tip, it thins out to a really thin tip at about the last maybe inch or so. The tip actually works really well on this. I did play around with this one, and the tip through soft product like onions went through extremely well. It was I'm going to give this tip a high performance rating. We'll see the grind is also thin at the edge, so these things perform quite nicely, thank you. The blade height is 49.9 millimeters, or just about 50 millimeters, and the handles are just kind of your classic, well-done oval, ambidextrous rosewood handle with a black packerwood stabilized wood ferrule. The circumference of that area between the ferrule and the main handle is about 3 inches, 76 millimeter, pretty standard size. That'll vary a little bit. This one's got a pretty generous neck on it, coming out of the back of the blade, so you've got a great spot for nestling your finger for a pinch grip. Balance point, speaking of that, is right about there, which for me is pretty close to where the kanji starts, maybe a little in front of that. And then, so that's a little bit behind, or I should say in front of my pinch grip. So what that does is give you some weight forward kind of balance point with some mass to the blade. So this blade definitely, it's stiff. It feels like you've got a knife in your hand and you got some cutting power, some chopping power with this blade. But the performance is really quite good. How it goes through ingredients kind of reminds me a little bit of the Tanaka Blue No. 2 Damascus series, which is a good complement. So the grinds are really well done on these. Even though you see that mark for how they finish the blade off, that's not a hard line. It's got a gentle, gradual step into the very edge, so that's not a hard line like you'd see on a Matsukage Yuki, for example. So these have a gentle convex into the edge, and it kind of starts in right in there, but it's definitely not a hard edge like you might visually see there. You can kind of tell that from looking at the reflection. Let's take a close-up look at it. So the performance of these knives is impresses, despite what you might get a fairly thick blade at the spine. But it translates into a lot of stiffness. So here's the semi-mirror polish, which is actually fairly durable, I found. I think that's a hand-chiseled kanji on there. It's just kind of smaller than I'm used to, but it looks hand-done. And nice grinds on these, nice finish on the spine, polish there, as well as the choil into the neck. So very comfortable out of the box. Out of the box edge, I'd say 5 out of 10. I went ahead and sharpened this one up, and man, it'll get sharp, let me tell you. It will get really sharp. Let's look at it on the cutting board. So again, this is a pretty impressive performing knife. You just have to want a reactive blade, that's all. So here's the profile. I think this has a fantastic general purpose profile. It's got a gentle curve, a little bit of flat area towards the heel, but super sweet, very smooth profile. You can rock up to about there on it. So I'd say it's kind of a low rocker, but not a pure push, or I should say pure chopper, but just a good gentle curve, very smooth, well ground, and kind of easy to use on the board. So just a cool line of knives. The polish adds a element of, I think it helps the cutting performance as well, and just gives you a little more upscale look. So there you have the Nishida Shidogami #1 polished Gyuto 210mm knife.